Hello, comrades.
Hello, everyone.
Today we have a slightly informal video because we are not talking about our future project, Korea IL2 series, but about the huge existing project IL2 Sturmovik, Great Battles. Our guest today is Vitya Seshnoi.
Yes.
Yes, it means that this discussion will be about planes, but not only that. The main reason we're talking about Great Battles today is the upcoming pre-order and early access of the project Siege and Liberation, Odessa and Leningrad.
Odessa and Leningrad, yes.
Yes, well, Victor and I wanted to tell you today about what this project is, how it happened, and what it will include. So let's start with how it came about that such a project became possible. Where did Odessa and Leningrad come from? What is it anyway?
Well, Odessa actually, on our forum, from our fans who played IL2, actually one of them was Yura Tarashuk, Zeus.
Yes.
Many know him by his nickname. And with his friends from Odessa, and another friend was from Mariupol. I think in the year 2016, they decided to make a map of Odessa. So I mean, basically that's when it started. They worked on the map for about a year and realized the task was enormous, with lots of unique buildings and so on. And the map itself was large. And somewhere until 2017, they did some things, and then it fizzled out for a while. In that time, so Yura managed to create a map of Velikie Luki, so we hired him. Later, one of those who worked on the map, I think on buildings and structures, joined us.
Vasya
Yes,
Kucheryavi?
He also works with us as a modeler. And actually, how long has it been? A year or a year and a half ago, we started working on the map again, as you knew.
Well, it's not like it completely resumed. Work just started to move slowly.
Yes, just a little bit by bit. Regarding the Karelia map, the story was similar. I'm not really sure when exactly it started. Yes, the guys, the Finnish team, you see.
I think it was 6 years, maybe 7.
Yes, also a very long time ago. They decided to make a map of the Gulf of Finland, the part of Finland, part of Soviet territory, and it also took them a long time. There are a large number of unique buildings. There is Leningrad, for example. There are a huge number of unique buildings they made, so it all took a very long time too. So it's been going on and on until today, and we decided to resume it approximately a year ago, right? So it's become more or less active, something like that. So
all that being said, how did we do? I mean, at the moment when we actually started working on Korea, it was decided to contact all the authors shortly afterward. That is with Zeus and with the Finnish team, and to negotiate with them about resuming accordingly production of these maps. What was the problem? The problem was that there were no clear goals defined beforehand. That is, the guys were doing, maybe they'll do something, and yes, and here we managed to agree with them on clear tasks and clear, respectively, goals, deadlines, and what each one gets for it. All the conditions were discussed, and this very much motivated both teams, respectively. And as a result, in just, it's been a year and a half, right? In just 1.5 years, the work on both maps is actually in its final stage. And it was this progress that allowed us to consider releasing new downloadable content for Great Battles in the year 2025, which will contain not one map, but 2 at once.
And also, of course, while we are working on Korea for 3 years in a boring way for an outside observer, yes, this supports our own Great Battles because firstly, the maps need to be recognizable, like the theater of operations, plus new planes will also come, which everyone has been waiting for a long time, so like, the more the better, as they say.
Yes, and therefore there was only one question left. Yes, and what should we do with filling this DLC with planes? Right, they won't appear out of nowhere either. Well, and accordingly, a decision was made. Well, by that time, one aircraft was already in production, the I-153. Yes, the Seagull. It was decided to include it. It was accepted. Since we have 2 theaters of operations implying a late period, there is the year 1944 to add aircraft highly wanted by everyone, the Yak-3 and La-7.
Yes, everyone has wanted them for a long time. Anyway, here they come.
Yes, that is with. So we consider this a great reason to create these two planes. Well, besides that, the planes are necessary for these theaters of war themselves, and there will be both an early and a late period. We will have an IL2 with arrow-shaped wings, which is also very much desired as the 1944 model. Yes, we will have an early LaGG-3 and an early Yak-1, we will talk about them now. And two German planes, the Bf-109E4, which is for the early period and for the later period. The Junkers 87D5, which is also very significant.
They keep asking.
Yes, they are asking. All right, so let's go into details. Probably we'll start with the airplanes.
Yeah, actually the Chaika I-153 will be in its basic modification with an Mi-62 engine. I think it's about a 1939 production model around the middle of the year. This means it is a later model already with a larger oil tank, SM62. A radio can be installed in it as a modification. And additionally, there is a more global modification of the aircraft, the installation of the M63 engine. This one is 100 horsepower more powerful.
Not too bad.
There you go. Along with that, it will also have a modification that replaces two of the Shaka's light machine guns with one UBS heavy MG, similar to the I-16 Type 29, something like that.
So how many Shaka's machine guns will it then have?
Two Shaka's machine guns and one UBS. Well, the only thing is we have decided to make it historically accurate because the data showed planes only with the M62 engine with such armament. So if you want a more powerful engine, you'll have to fly with 4 Shaka's machine guns. Accordingly, with the M62, it will be possible to fit 1 UBS and 2 SHK-AS. Again, anticipating the question, why didn't we make a modification with SHV-AK cannons? Firstly, because only 6 or 8 of those planes were built. About 4 planes were sent for military trials, and that's it. No more information is available. How many cannons were fitted? Some sources say 2, while others say as many as 4. Nothing is known at all. No, at least there is info about planes fitted with 1 UBS and 2 Shkayas, and at least there are photos of how it looked externally. So it has 1 UBS mounted on top.
Yeah, to this day, there are people out there who are still questioning us. Why did you give cannons to the MC-202 when there were, I think, only 1 or 2 prototypes of those? But Shivak is fine, right? When there were only 2 of those planes.
Well, again, judging by what, again, the fragments of information, like how it flew, became heavy inert. Well, and I especially think that is, to be honest, UB is better than Shvak. Well,
a perfect occasion to talk a bit about the Chaika and why everyone loves it so much. So, is it really true that it was so maneuverable that it could turn around in a tight spot like no other?
Well, first of all, this biplane was the first in the world to have retractable landing gear, which retracts in flight. Unlike the I-16 that had a mechanical drive, here it operates with a pneumatic drive, so you could even say it's more modern. And the equipment is better with the Chaika. Yes, and if I remember correctly, it generally appeared later than the I-16, in fact, regarding the timing of their appearance. And therefore, the concept of the monoplane only emerges around the years 1937 to 38. Not everyone believed that monoplanes were like that yet, that they were much better than biplanes. That's why they actually made the Chaika, like a maneuverable fighter aircraft and stuff, like modern with retractable landing gear. And by the way, its construction is mainly metal, meaning it's covered with fabric, right? But unlike the I-16, yes, the rear part of the I-16 was made from veneer. So you could say the Chaika is even more modern than the I-16 in terms of construction, but
technologically,
still a biplane.
let's say.
Technologically,
that
yes.
is, structurally, it's still a biplane, but technologically, it's more concise. Please tell literally in 20 seconds about the I-16 and the I-153. What's the fundamental difference in flight characteristics? Which is faster, which is more maneuverable?
Well, the I-16 is faster, and therefore the Seagull is more maneuverable. The Seagull is slower simply because there is more drag from the wings, and also there are stands between them. They greatly affect the speed.
Right, so let's now jump straight from 1939 to 1944. Do we agree on the Yak-3?
Yes, Yak-3. Accordingly, we have a Yak-3 from Series 9. This is a production machine, at least according to the report, which is being used as the primary source of all the main data during its development. So the engineers who will be adjusting the airplane, right? This machine was built at the Saratov plant in May. That's May 1944. They started being delivered in mass. Well, not exactly in mass, but the first machines, which were more or less in certain quantities, in good, decent quantities, began to be delivered to frontline units around June, July 1944.
So we still have some leeway, right?
Yes. So we will have to, for example, move to Leningrad, since the regiments that flew on Yaks were accordingly much further south. So here we will sort of add regiments that kind of existed but did not fly on this front or appeared significantly later. That is, for example, for Odessa, for the defense there, they appear a little later than when our last phase ends. Well, for the phase of the career that we estimated here, accordingly, and also accordingly why there are Series 9 planes. There are roughly 9 to 13 series planes in different sources, differently there. At that moment, planes started to appear with a second UBS, so in our base model, we'll have a plane with one UBS on the left, and accordingly, as a modification, a second UBS can be added. Well, this is the classic Yak-3 that everyone knows. Yes, it usually has two UBSs and one Schwach, but there were earlier planes with one UBS, so they will be slightly lighter. That's the situation, and accordingly, the engine is slightly more powerful compared to previous modifications like the Yakovlev-9 and Yakovlev-7. And here the engine will be the M105 PF2, which I think is about 50 horsepower, 50 to 60 horsepower more powerful, around 1310 or something like that.
And the La-7?
La-7, accordingly, the La-7 will be from the first series. Accordingly, the same thing. In the base, it will be armed with two Shavaka cannons. And as a modification, the player will be able to equip it with three B-20 cannons. This modification appeared very late, that is somewhere around 1945, April or May, or something quite late.
Why is the B-20 cannon better than the HVAK? It's better than 20, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it is essentially a machine gun. Well, you could say that it is very similar based on the UB machine gun, meaning it uses the same ammunition as the Schwach. It's just lighter, that's all. So what's the deal? An interesting story is that initially the LA-7 was supposed to be serially produced with exactly this kind of armament, that is three B-20 cannons, but due to problems with the weapons themselves, that is, they were being refined for quite some time. There were discrepancies with reliability and so on. The machines were initially produced with HVAKs. If you look at the plane from the outside, it has a hood loop on top. And if you see how the hood opens over the cannons, it's shifted to the right, meaning it's not centered symmetrically, but off to the side. And it's located there because of that, because originally there were two on the left and one was fitted right here. And after that, basically, without changing the engine cowling, they installed two Schwach cannons. That's it. And actually, the B-20 is just a little bit faster in terms of rate of fire. Well, overall, it's more or less the same weapon.
When it comes to the La-7 and the La-5N, what is the main difference in their characteristics?
Once again, we can mention that basically, if we look at it, yes, we have the La-5, the very first one, and then we have the La-7, and in fact, nothing was changed. The same, well, the La-5FN engine appeared later, the AH82FN with fuel injection, but essentially the same engine, the same design, everything was the same. So it turns out that this was just an evolution. Not just, roughly speaking, not that the evolution was technical, but rather technological. That is, the plane was significantly redesigned, meaning its aerodynamic shape was changed significantly, which means it was improved. In fact, in the LS7, they implemented all kinds of recommendations that were constantly suggested. In aerodynamics, it was from the TEIS AGI Institute, right? That is what was there to improve speed and all that, etc. And in general, in essence, the La-7 and early La-5 are constructively the same plane, but externally completely different.
Well, there's a very important point. They finally removed the air intake that was obstructing the view.
Yes, the air intake was correspondingly moved to the wing roots, into the center section. The oil cooler was placed under the center of the aircraft, under the cockpit as well. So aerodynamically, it is a more advantageous design, meaning less drag. The landing gear became slightly longer, meaning the legs were lengthened, and therefore they converge closer to the center there. Well, if you compare the La-5 with the La-5FN, it just became faster, slightly quicker to climb. That's it. Otherwise, it's the same old La-5, basically. Overall,
we shouldn't expect anything amazing, right? But it's still better.
Yes, it's like a super miracle. It's just faster there by about 20 to 30 kilometers per hour. So it's not just a little.
Not a bit.
That means it's around 660, 650, something like that.
Let's talk again about Lavochkins and Yaks, but not about the year 1944, but rather 1941.
So actually, we'll have the LaGG-3 Series 4. Firstly, why did we choose the LaGG-3 Series 4? Firstly, flashbacks from the old IL2, because we had exactly the Series 4 there. Plus, in principle, it fits well into the time period. So we have a plane built around June, July 1941, probably June. So this is actually an early LaGG, a 5-gun variant.
5 fuel tanks.
And the 5 fuel tanks, accordingly, it is armed with a Shivaki cannon, a UBS. Wait, it turns out a 4-gun, pardon. A Schwach in the center of the motor block, accordingly, and 1 UBS and 2 SKS. It's the one that has all of those bumps on the nose.
Oh, right. It has such a nose covered in machine guns. Yes.
Yes, so there's, but overall, still, in principle, if you remove these parts and install an M105 PF engine, it's basically the same LaGG-3 as in the 29th series. I mean, essentially, it's an earlier model, which is a bit heavier, and therefore has a less powerful engine, the 105P. One interesting feature is that it you could say it's even more advanced than a late LaGG, because, for example, it has a water radiator shutter that opens with buttons. So it had an electromechanical mechanism, not mechanical, but remote control.
Well, wartime conditions set their own
Well,
rules.
when you think about it, it's kind of pre-war, you know, almost. So that's why there are still some fancy features left,
Yes.
right?
Well, it's like with the I-153 and the I-16, the same thing.
Yes. So accordingly, but the only downside is that the oil radiator scoop is fixed in the open position. That is, it is kind of always open. Well, the only downside is that on these early planes, i.e. The bomb racks were not supposed to be there, but there will be a provision for 8 rockets.
Like on the IL2.
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay. Listen, it is also worth noting that it is not just a slightly improved version of the previous LaGG model we had. The new aircraft model has been significantly improved visually with a much more detailed cockpit. Yes, because with the LaGG-3 Series 29 we have back in Stalingrad, there it's completely...
It's much simpler.
Simple, isn't it? Yeah. Well, this was still our very first model in Battle of Stalingrad, which we started working on back in 2013. Naturally, it's the least advanced of all. A lot has been developed in this area, and now it's really at a high level.
Yes, I mean, for the external model, firstly, the intake pipes of the carburetor differed slightly in shape in the Shirley version, and they also tweaked the front a bit. Accordingly, they adjusted the radiator's outlet scoop. They added some polygons where it was angular.
We did the same with the visual model, of course, with Yak-1 as well. But let's still explain what kind of machine this is.
Yes, so the Yak-1 will be from the 23rd series, also initially approximately from June 1941. This is our early version, let's say it's called, because the one from the 69th series is what we call eared. That is, its rear canopy part has kind of semicircular inserts. And here is still the early version of the canopy, meaning there was a fully transparent rear section.
The view is much better, you know.
Yes, the view is better. Accordingly, the engine is an earlier M105P, and the player will have access to the M105PA modification. This is essentially an engine that originally had a float-type carburetor, which was replaced and improved for better performance under negative G forces. Additionally, starting with the 23rd series, a lever was added specifically for more power, like a boost. Basically, with the M105PA engine, there, when you push it to the max, it operates in a constant boosted mode. Yes, they added a small lever here. Actually, what's interesting is that later in the 69th series, the same lever is used to drop bombs. Yes, to make it useful, especially when they installed that very thing.
The exact same one?
I think so. Yes, accordingly, in the base model, it will also be armed with a Sheshvaka cannon and 2 Sheshkas, similar to the 69 series. The base plane will not have a radio, so our assumption is that it will be a field modification for radio equipment, meaning without a mast antenna, but with direct wires. So there is an insulator directly on the fuselage where they are installed. So the radio equipment will be seen in the cockpit. Also, as a modification, 6 rocket rails will be installed. Overall, I chose the option where there is no SBR3P, that dial that selects, but 3 buttons on the control stick instead. So they shoot in pairs. And it's kind of more like a direct modification. Well, here it looks more interesting like this. Plus the cockpit has been seriously reworked, meaning it's been significantly retextured. In general, they slightly changed the shape of the canopy because in the 69th series it was a bit too wide. Basically, they fixed that issue, and that's how it is.
Let's move on to the main character of the series, actually. Our favorite IL2.
Yes, the model 1944 with arrow wings, so we will have...
This will be 1, 2, 3, the 4th variant.
by year, yes, that's how it fits. So we will have a variant, an all-metal one, meaning an all-metal wing. So accordingly, the only downside is that this model did not use NS-37 cannons. That means they were not produced with these guns. The only model that was fitted with these was the previous model, which is from 1943.
So, do you know why this was?
Because anti-tank PTB bomblets were developed. And to fire those NS-37 cannons, you need a well-trained pilot, first of all, and secondly, you need the guns to fire in sync constantly. That means calibration, all that stuff. When they fire out of sync, a little sway starts, and the first few shots will hit, but later ones won't. And then, you know, it wasn't worth the effort, you know, with these cannons. So accordingly, from such large differences in general, that is, it only has wings with an arrow shape, and accordingly, the plane will always have VIA cannons, because the models that, for example, we had in the database, they were initially equipped with Shavakas, but then they switched to Vayvoyas. Nearly all the model 1944 planes had Vayvoya guns. So the plus is that we can fit those M8s and M13s. Well, basically the M8 is the same as the ROVs. just with a bit more explosive charge. And the M13 is the Arov's 132, but it's the same projectile that was fired by the Katyusha. And the plus for us is that it will be the M13 UK with improved accuracy. It had little holes in the projectile that made it spin in flight.
I have always had this question, why the rocket-propelled projectiles in World War II? There were a huge number of them, not only with us, but with the British too. Why did they make them and not give them rotation? It doesn't take much to do this. Either bend the nozzles, or you can also bend these rudders as an option, because it's obvious that giving the projectile rotation compensates for manufacturing defects. You can have, due to manufacturing defects, a thrust vector that is slightly off, and you understand that the shells are mass-produced, so it's normal for some nozzles to be a bit bent or dented or something else. And because of this, if there's even a slight thrust vector or aerodynamic issue, like some asymmetry, it will constantly drift to one side. If your projectile is twisted, then as it spirals, it will not deviate from the general axial direction. This logic applies to both bombs and shells. It's still a mystery to me how the Germans figured this out for their bombs as early as World War I. They used stabilizing fins to reduce dispersion, and why did no one develop this idea throughout World War II?
Well, I think there might have been another problem missing if you hang such an ordnance under the plane, right? They already have bent stabilizers, there might be more resistance, or it could simply jump.
Who knows? It's a mystery. Just a very obvious solution that wasn't used. All right, let's go.
Okay, here I am speaking. They didn't use curved stabilizers, but rather the projectile's body had little holes through which some gases would exit, causing it to spin slightly.
All right, and now let's move to another side. The blue one, there, as expected, are two German airplanes, right?
Yes, the Bf109 E4, but it's kind of a quick solution we have, yes, because with the E4 and the E7, well, we right now have the E7, and in some visual cases you can't tell them apart at all. Essentially, we removed the possibility of a droppable fuel tank, meaning there's a small tube in the cockpit, and plus small external differences, meaning it had a hole in the propeller spinner on the E-models that was originally intended for a cannon to be placed there, but it didn't work out. So that's basically all.
Yes, plus there are some improvements to the model, of course.
Yes, so this model will have better texturing. So in general, it's one of the latest models, like our IR-80. It's kind of made for great battles using older technologies, but it's significantly richer in textures and the polygons are done better.
Well, it is primarily due to applying all of our accumulated experience. That is, we have been working on the Second World War since 2013, and we have accumulated a lot of experience in the same polygon work and texture budget to achieve much greater results.
Yes, well, plus we will add the feature of installing the 601N engine. That is, it comes standard with the 601AA engine, which runs on 87-octane gasoline on B4. Previously, when we were building planes back in the Stalingrad days, this option wasn't available, but the engineers would say, like, we can't do it yet, we don't know how. Now, accordingly, we've had this option for a long time. Thus, the base E4 model will be fitted with the 601AA and, as a modification, the 601N. This is the one that operated on 100-octane fuel. As such, it will be a little more powerful, so the base is the same plane in general as the E7.
And now the second plane, which will have many differences.
The second one will be the Ju-87 D-5. You could also say that it is essentially the same as the D-3, except it has enlarged wing consoles, the wingspan has increased, and consequently the wing area has become slightly larger.
And no one really knows why, to be honest.
Actually, it was to reduce the load being placed on the
wings. So why was that necessary? I mean, I haven't met anyone who has actually explained it. What's so special about it?
Is it too obvious? Well, the wingspan is longer, and accordingly I assume it positively affects the maneuverability and payload capacity of the airplane. Plus, you can cheaply add a section there, basically the same airplane, just increase the section, and the wingspan becomes bigger.
I haven't heard of any major drawbacks with it in the D3 model. So why was there such a necessity? I don't know.
Here, one of the main external differences is the replacement of the MG-17 machine guns with MG-151/20 cannons.
That's what I call an upgrade to 20 millimeters.
And there they replaced it thoroughly with 500 shells per barrel.
Woohoo!
500. So you can just hold it and go, I don't know, pour some tea. Maybe it will hit something because, for example, right now, if we take the largest number of rounds we have for the 151, that's the FW-190, I think 250 on the wing root guns. And here it will be 2,000. Therefore,
you can strafe properly.
Yes. Accordingly, it will have the same engine in the Boss model. The player will also have access to the Jumo 211 P-engine modification, which is more powerful. 201 more horsepower, I think. It has a takeoff weight of 1,420 kilograms, and with this engine, I think it will be 1,600 kilograms. That's it, and plus, accordingly, you can optionally install a flame damper according to some sources. Well, in principle, when you read it in the manuals, this is in principle a model that was already called D7 and D8, for example. For example, in the later German technical documents. There will also be the possibility to install this 201 SP motor on the D3. And also, of course, it perfectly suits a carrier mode. For example, Bodenplattes, when all those planes flew just like in the later modification, that is with flame dampers. At night there, with NSGR10, I think we have that one.
With the Stuvie, right?
Yes, and also accordingly, it will be possible to install the Stuvie, which everyone has long been asking for. Because we made the Stuvie for the Mi 410, that is the site itself, and accordingly the technology for it. Plus, accordingly, the same thing is installed, well, the same thing, but with a different aiming device on the Arado R234. They're essentially the same computer, basically, this calculator. So accordingly, it will be possible to replace the site and install it. Here, oh, and plus there is something else it will have as a modification. It's something pretty interesting.
What? Wheels.
Oh, and by the way, here's an interesting topic. Initially, in literature, it was unclear about this jettisonable landing gear feature. So this Stuka's landing gear could be jettisoned. Well, this was a long time ago, back when I was working on the D3. I missed this feature, honestly speaking, because it was in a separate technical note, a separate bulletin, meaning they had a technical modification of the aircraft. It's not in the technical description of the aircraft at all. There's a separate document where you could install this feature, and it was extremely simple to do so. The landing gear leg, right there, the strut, right? There was a bolt on top and also from the side like a clamp. And basically they added a bolt on the explosive clamp and a bolt on top. So the bolts exploded and the leg just basically fell off. Cool. They made a modification on the fairing itself. They cut it, added some sealing gaskets like that. So basically, for example, the same thing that's on this one at the museum in Duxford, I think it's the Air Force Museum. It's the only surviving one modified to the G2 model, meaning it has 37mm cannons. You can clearly see that it has a leg, plus there's a small hole on the upper surface of the wing, right above the strut cup where the wheel holds the landing gear.
So tell me, why was that necessary?
Well, in case of a forced landing, like when you land in a field or something, you know, if you've been hit or have to land after takeoff, to avoid kicking the bucket, yeah, like when you bump into some ditch and die, you better jettison the landing gear. Well,
or a water landing.
yes, water landing. So you do understand, right? That the first thing everyone in multiplayer will do is take off and jettison their landing gear because it will fly faster, most likely. Well, not most likely, but that's exactly how it will be.
Maybe we should mark them as destroyed, like it counts as immediately dead.
Yeah, that's why Stukas without landing gear will, I think, be a feature
yes,
on
indeed.
all the servers.
Listen, let's probably move on to the plot part since we don't have lots of time, and talk about what this narrative will actually be in terms of the story.
Yes, well, actually, both maps that will be in the expansion will come with full-fledged careers. That is for the pilot. Each career will have the main phases: siege and liberation for both Odessa and Leningrad. Inside each major phase, there will be chapters, and accordingly, currently we have approximately 20 new units, meaning the stories were written specifically for these squadrons, and plus some of the older ones that were already with us in the Battle of Moscow, the Battle of Stalingrad, they will also participate. Thus, for Odessa, we have the defense period. This is the end of June 1941 to October 1941. That is from the border battles to the siege of Odessa. So the liberation is approximately from April 1944 to August 1944. That's it. These will be the Odessa parts.
Well, that's still quite a lot.
Yes, it's quite decent. And here's precisely the question about the La-7, and I think they appeared on this front about a month later. I think it's not a big deal. Everyone will forgive us
think
for
that
such an assumption.
just for them to exist, they'll forgive us.
Yes, and the planes were already on the front line according to series production. That is simply in small quantities. So accordingly, and for Leningrad, we have from September 1941 to April 1942.
Since September, well, I mean, it's fall, winter, spring. So that's, wow, that's... So this is the approach of the front to Leningrad and the stabilization of this front.
From the start of the blockade.
Yeah, so that's in 1941. That is actually up to the moment of the evacuation starting.
Yes, there was there were no airfields left. So Odessa was surrounded, and that's it. So accordingly, the liberation was from July 1944, from around the end of July, and until September, October 1944. That's how it turns out. So that's how things are going to be for us.
Yes, well, overall, yes, that all seems right.
So accordingly, yes, again, you can add that both pilot careers will include all the latest updates that we have had for careers in general. Well, that's a given.
That's for sure.
New types of missions, yes. So about 20 or more have already been made.
Well, there's like so much information here, actually, because this will probably be one of the biggest, if not the biggest DLC in the history of Great Battles. I mean, this is the first time we're releasing not just 8 planes, right? Even though some of them are just minor modifications of existing ones, although we often did that before too.
At least in terms of content, the map is probably the
But
largest.
2 maps, 4 careers, right? I mean,
It's like Leningrad, Odessa. There are many unique
2
buildings.
massive cities, yes. I mean, it's just really cool. If we talk about the maps themselves, just a few words, yes? So if we're talking about Odessa, there's a unique implementation of interesting agglomerations that were located along rivers, where there's a continuous village along the river, right in the valleys.
The Yak-1 fortress. Yes.
Odessa itself, the view from the Potemkin stairs is of course impressive. As for Finland, that the Finnish side of the Gulf of Finland is entirely new and unique content, a completely new set of buildings created by a Finnish team.
The big city is there, Kotka.
Yes. Viborg, yes, they have
Kola.
implemented their own set of textures, which they made, which are most characteristic for this area. It's swampy, warm.
Well, plus they tried to recreate it according to the maps of that time, because the Finns claimed that the maps from the 1930s and 1940s were used in building that map. The same goes for Odessa. So it is as close as possible to the appearance of that time.
Very specific airfields, but they were on the Finnish side, not just built right into the forest there. Yeah, it's all forests there, and there are swamps too.
There are swamps there. I think it would be a lot of fun to build a career there, because the front line, which is there, positions the artillery somewhere in the forest so that it doesn't end up in some swamp.
All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Be sure to follow the news, because I'm sure we managed to get you interested in this new update. Go ahead and pre-order, because there will be a special discount for everyone who pre-orders. After the pre-order, early access should begin soon. And during early access, we will be adding these airplanes, starting with 2. Well, plus Odessa will be in early access, but without a career mode for now. And by release, we will complete the remaining planes, finish the Soviet side of the Gulf of Finland map, and complete all the careers. Well, we plan that by the end of the year or the very beginning of 2026, we should be able to finish.
And additionally, we can tease the fact that we will be introducing new airplanes, which in essence will also be participating in these careers.
Yes, but while the negotiation process is ongoing, we won't mention the models. Once we know for sure, we'll tell you which ones, but you'll be surprised. So keep up with the news, make sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please like the news and this video. Victor, thank you so much.
Always glad. Stay in touch.